I have someone here that has been to the top, that has done everything they can possibly do. They are championship mentality all the time. I'm going to do everything that person did because that's where I want to be.
You need to wholeheartedly surrender and follow their lead, and that takes a lot of confidence in their abilities as well, doesn't it?
He was rough. He was mean in many ways. The environment was not for everybody, but that's the stuff that really molds and builds champions. And I think if it wasn't for the way I was raised and someone like Jody to cultivate that, I mean, I don't know what I would have done.
On this episode of the Elite Podcast, I speak to Ross Levine, multiple world kickboxing champion, karate combat champion, and owner and head coach of Turbo Sports Performance.
Ross, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, Lee. It's great to see you again. It's been a super long time, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's really good to see you, buddy. Yeah, it's been a long time, very long time. In fact, actually, I hadn't seen you for a long time. I saw you at Elijah Fort in Vegas, actually.
In Vegas, yeah.
Yeah, so I saw you then briefly. I didn't get to see you so long. But before that, it's been, I don't know.
Years.
The first time I was just speaking to someone earlier today about you. And before I go on, actually, first of all, congratulations on your success. Bloody hell. Thank you very much. You've really done well. Karate Combat World Champion. Amongst many other things, I'm not sure. That's probably the pinnacle, I would say, of your career. Is it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, especially as a professional. I mean, that's those are the world titles that I held as a pro. But yeah, man. I mean, just even coming up in the game, getting a chance to be around people like you when I started traveling overseas for sport karate. I mean, that's kind of where it all started for me. So. Absolutely.
Yeah. So first time I met you, we were in the finals, weren't we, of the Irish Open?
That's right. I was thinking, I can't remember what year it was.
I can't,
well over a decade ago.
I was trying to think, one of us was 23. I thought I don't know if it was you or if it was me. And you were even younger, but you were British, mate. With the Americans come over there and they was the next level as well. I mean, since the Americans started coming to Europe, it did raise the standard in Europe as well. You probably noticed over the coming 10 or 15, 20 years, however long it was, that the standard in Europe's also come up as well. But when you were coming over then, you guys, you'd only just started coming over a couple of years ago. It was Raymond, Jedi, a few of the others, Paul Mitchell teams. What team was it you were in when you came over?
So at the time when I came over, I think the first year that I came over was kind of like a mixed team. But we came over with like Team Straight Up.
Okay, yeah.
It was a very different group. We didn't come over as like, the team that I was on was Team Full Circle.
Yeah.
And even when the very first time I came over, we might have been even younger than that. There was a team called Wasuru. It was a company, a uniform company from Canada that was sponsoring us. Although it was the same team. We were the same group under Coach Mike Conroy. But yeah, I think Full Circle was when I really started coming overseas a lot more. And that's when I started meeting and fighting all the best over there.
Yeah, and you were really good. I remember seeing, because you definitely were quite young. You were younger than me. How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 36 now.
Oh, yeah, God, yeah. So I'm 47. So 11 years, There's 11 years. That's right then. So I must have been maybe 30 and you were probably like late teens.
Well, no, I was already in my early mid 20s.
Yeah,
when
you must have been
over.
You must have been 23 then, and I must have been 30, 35 or something. That's right then. So that must have been right. So I must have been getting towards the end. But you're brilliant. Do you know what I loved about the Americans and yourself especially is that you'd have a proper fight as well, wouldn't you? It'd be full on scrap.
Oh yeah.
No shitty stealing of points, man. It was war, wasn't it? And especially when me and you had
I think that's why like the UK fighters and the American fighters always got along, because we both shared an equal hate for like the middle European countries that just played the game, so it was always fun.
Play the game like that in some of the other sports as well, like football.
Sure.
Yeah. It's playing the rules rather than fighting. It's all about having a fight, isn't it? The warrior spirit and expressing that through combat, rather than just winning. Not even winning. Sometimes not even fighting. It's fight avoidance by using the rules, isn't it? And that's very frustrating if you're a warrior and you got in there. But then, obviously. Absolutely. You probably, if that's the way you are, then you need to progress out of kind of points, don't you? But it gives a great foundation. People like yourself, Michael Page, Raymond Daniels, There's plenty of others from the States as well. Who else have you got?
Elijah as well now.
Yeah, a lot of obviously Elijah as well, who's come through. Wonder Boy.
Robbie, little Robbie. Was doing some full contact too. Yeah.
And the transition. Yeah, the transition. Well, the transition works if you come from a really strong style of points fighting, I think. Not like we were just discussing. If you fight avoidance and you're just trying to nip points, you're not good at. But if you come from a really strong foundation, you do loads of plyometrics and you can bang and you can take a shot, then it's the perfect transition. If you can hit someone, then you can hit someone without getting hit, and you keep doing that, you win any form of combat that's striking orientated. Yeah, as you've gone on prove as you've gone on to prove. But what would be great if I could, mate, if I could just rewind back a little bit to kind of when you started your martial arts journey, and where are you now in the States? Because it's just the States to me, but the States is a pretty big place, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So I actually grew up in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and then started martial arts when I was 7 years old. So like any other kind of young kid doing karate, I wasn't really sure if that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be outside and be rambunctious and play around and stuff. And my brother had won a trophy from like a little local tournament, an inter-school tournament, and I was hooked. I'm like, that's what I want. I was driven towards the competition. So I just stayed with it. And my brother had initially gotten in because he was getting bullied around in school and things like that, and I just jumped in because I wanted the trophy. So, I stuck with martial arts, and I lived in New York for 25 years. That's where I met Johnny Tension, who was my mentor when it comes to sport karate and really all things combat sports and life. But now I live in Rhode Island, so about 3 hours north of where I grew up in New York.
Wow. Yeah. So, and Jenny is your main instructor. So how old are you when you started kind of training with him?
So I knew who Jody was from seeing him around the scene, competing and things, but we didn't really get in touch until I was about 16 years old. That's when I came to his gym. I was training with someone, Hakeem Walker, who had been overseas a couple times, but Hakeem was really well known in like the Northeast. And then even in the States, he became pretty popular as a fighter. He was training with Jody. But he lived a little closer to me, so we cross-trained a lot together. And at some point when I was around 16, he was like, listen, I can't teach you anything else. You got to go to Jody. I just went and got my rear end handed to me quite a few times, and I just never stopped.
What a great coach that is, to admit that and to guide you on to someone else as well. That takes a lot of humility, that does. Sometimes it's... people do kind of outgrow the coach, and they do need to spread their wings and to go further afield. And as a good coach, I always say this: if you got a fighter and you truly care about their growth and experience, and there comes a point where they do need to, then you need to support them and direct them on. We had the same with Elijah when he was in top 10 UK team, and he was just beating everyone in the UK. There was nothing, and he had to go overseas. So we knew Ray. Ray had been on the top 10 team. I'd become good friends with him. I had quite a few fights with Ray as well, and we knew each other. They knew Elijah was up and coming, and we said, like, can you? It was like an agreement from both sides, really, And Elijah wanted to go. He wanted to take Elijah, and I wanted Elijah to do better. So, and well, look at where he's gone now. Crazy. We've been lucky enough to have some fantastic mentors, but that was very humble of him. So when you got to Jedi, then a whole other area, I might imagine, would have opened up of possibilities. Is that how it felt?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a tremendous culture shock, just like on the level, the level and the intensity of the training. Cause I did sport karate in the school I grew up in, but it was nothing like, going and being with Jody, who was one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world when I first got there. And still actively competing. So if you weren't on his page, obviously not everyone's going to be on his level, but if you weren't down with the program, if you weren't like, listen, get in here, shut up and do what you got to do, and don't ask questions unless it pertains to what we're doing, like, you got to get in line. It was just such a competitive atmosphere, and I loved it. There were so many people just didn't like that from him. He was rough. He was mean in many ways. abusive, verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. But,
Sounds like my type of guy.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how I felt. And, it's funny because I just saw Jody. He was with me in my last fight, and I still go down and train with Jody as much as I can. But it's so funny now to look back, and it's like, man, dude, I've known you for 20 years, and like there really hasn't been another Ross that came out of the gym. And he's like, dude, you just built different. So
yeah.
and that's not to like pump myself up, but it's a testament to the environment. The environment was not for everybody.
No.
But that's the stuff that really molds and builds champions. And I think if it wasn't for the way I was raised, like my parents just being kind of blue collar, kind of tough on me, and someone like Jody to cultivate that, I mean, I don't know what I would have done.
Well, it sounds like the perfect combination for both of you. He created a legacy as well through his own fighting and through you as well.
That's right.
And you were able to excel to where you've got by having the perfect coach there. And I don't think by the sounds of it, anyone else would have done it for you. You sound like you were perfectly kind of matched with what you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, that was my Phil Jackson, right? I mean, he was the guy that I just did whatever he said. He said, jump, how high, when, and that was that. It was the method to success. For me, it's very simple. Like, and I don't understand how some other people don't see it this way, but if I have someone here that has been to the top, that has done everything they can possibly do, and they are championship mentality all the time, I'm going to do everything that person did. Everything. Without asking questions, blindly, because that's where I want to be. And I think some people don't have that mentality, and I don't understand it. When you want to be a champion, they're like, that's just what you got to do. You got to follow in the footsteps of the people who have paved that path. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and be grateful to be around someone as well that's walked that path and prepared to teach you. I mean, the reason I think people don't is because it's hard and they'll make excuses as to why they don't want to do it normally. They're normally lying to themselves, aren't they? You need to surrender your will, don't you? If you've got someone who knows more than you need to wholeheartedly surrender and follow their lead. And that takes a lot of confidence in their abilities as well, doesn't it? But yeah, you're very lucky to have each other, really. And it's a beautiful relationship you've got as well. I saw you recently. It must have been what you were talking about on your last fight, because have you retired now as well? Or is that have you really though? Or, you're young, you're done.
Everyone keeps asking me that. I'm retired, man. I have so many things that I'm looking forward to doing, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah. As far as professional fighting, I've done what I wanted to do, in the venue that I was able to do it. There's a couple of things in my career that I wish, if I could go turn back the clock, like COVID, I'm sure ruined so much for you guys. It ruined a ton for us as well.
2 years lost. Yeah.
Well, and then also I was fighting for Glory Kickboxing, and that was following in some of my mentors, and Bazooka Joe Baltellini, another person, amazing martial artist. Raymond was in Glory as well and kind of got right there and fell short. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to run for that too. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I loved Glory Kickboxing. And then when COVID shut everything down, Glory changed. And that was kind of the end of my run there. And that's when I found Karate Combat. And it took me in that direction, which has been fantastic. But
Glory changed, did you say?
Yeah. So Glory Kickboxing was obviously a global company, but they had a very well-established North American side of it. They had North American, not managers, but people that, I don't want to say CEOs. I don't think they owned a stake in Glory, but there was an entire division of North American on the roster, on the administrative side, but also on the fighter side. And when COVID happened, they basically released everyone from North America. If I'm not mistaken, they had filed for debt relief and rebranded as like a Dutch-only company. And then they slowly expanded to like Germany and Belgium. And I still don't think they do any shows outside of that area anymore. So all the people who are rostered right now are generally Europeans.
Okay, yeah, seen, yeah. So it really it messed a load of things up, didn't it? Just imagine how many fighters it retired as well. That probably had a few years left in him, was like, done now. Momentum's lost.
Yeah, and all on the American side too. It's a lot of the Americans were, were well ranked. There weren't a ton of Americans on the Glory roster, but even a fellow, guy from the UK, Jamie Bates. Jamie Bates, a good friend of mine, we were in the same division. It was like, when are we going to match up? And then it just kind of shut everything down, and he hasn't gotten the ball rolling back yet either. So Yeah, just the few Americans that were really successful were either on the cusp of breaking into the top 10 or they were already world ranked. And then it just all fell apart.
Yeah. So how did you, so you did all your sport karate, you were doing really well at that. You won titles, numerous titles in that. You're on some of the best teams, if not the best teams in the world. And how did you progress onto the more full contact side? Because I remember hearing the rumors, I can't remember how long ago, maybe 10 years ago or something was it, when you started to do a bit of the glory in the full contact. And I remember thinking, he's going to do well at that. And I remember speaking to someone about it, he's going to watch him. I said, he'll definitely win a world title in that. He's definitely going to do well. Kind of how did it evolve?
It was kind of funny, man. I really had I always liked doing the full contact, but I never really had any coaching for it. I always enjoyed watching it. Even when I was having no contact whatsoever with full contact martial arts. I remember as a kid growing up watching like the K1 Grand Prix. My dad and I remember sitting in his bed watching, instead of cartoons in the morning, we would watch the K1, and just, I was so absorbed with it. So when I went up to grad school, I have my doctorate in physical therapy. So I'm a physio as well. And that's my main job. Everyone looked at my fighting as like, oh, he's a pro fighter. That was like my side job.
You got brains as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, I've been trying to keep them. That's why I'm retiring.
Fair one, yeah.
So, when I moved away from New York City, I was 25 years old. I moved up to New Hampshire, which is, I'm 3 hours north, and New Hampshire is probably another 2 hours from here, further north. So I was about 5 hours away from home. I had no sport karate in the area. And I needed to train while I was in school just so I can keep in shape. And I was still competing as a sport karate athlete. I was still doing seminars, things like that. So I found a gym, a place called Team Link, and they were MMA gym. And, the guy who owned it had done a little bit of karate back in the day, but he was, kickboxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu. So I just started training, like just going to do, cardio classes to stay in shape. And they were like, hey, you're pretty good. You should come to our like pro class. Like, all right, cool. I had never put on boxing gloves before. So I was, 25 years old for the first time putting on boxing gloves. And, and then I just started sparring with those guys, had no idea what I was doing, just, side kicking them, blitzing them, moving, trying, like you said, to hit them and not get hit. And then they're like, hey, you're pretty good. You should take a fight. I was like, all right, let's do it. So it just kind of started like that. And, I learned the ins and outs. They taught me some Muay Thai, and I worked on some boxing and just started slowly developing, taking amateur fights. But it wasn't until I was about 25 years old. So yeah, 11 years ago as an amateur.
Wow. Yeah. And I noticed as well, because you were a very strong right-sided points fighter, weren't you? But when you went into full, a lot of the time I watch you're in left, aren't you? So, or do you tend to do a bit of a switch between both? Because you've gone, this is what I did years ago as well. And I kind of had to relearn again. And then because it's a different sport, isn't it? But you've got all that grounding of like 10 years or whatever you had of like your sport karate background. And then were you having to kind of relearn everything, or could you not build your style around the right side? What made you choose to go from orthodox to kind of from southpaw to orthodox?
Yeah. I mean, I think I just, I was having a hard time learning how to get square.
Yeah.
In my southpaw stance. So like you said, as a point fighter, I was usually so bladed and using my front leg, that it just felt so unnatural for me to square up and figure out what to do. And also, point fighters were so used to having that front hand a little lower that when I was trying, I just wasn't seeing things happening on my southpaw side. So I was like, you know what, if I'm going to get good at kickboxing, and I'm not going to do anything unless I'm going to be world caliber, I want to completely start from the bottom and relearn it. And, my thought process was, I have all of these weapons from this side. If I can develop a strong boxing base, kickboxing kind of Dutch style from my orthodox stance, the way they would normally teach me, in the US at least, it's, listen, your power hand goes behind you. So it's like, okay, let me learn from scratch. Let me learn how to box and kickbox and throw low kicks and do all of that from here. And now when I disengage and I'm moving and I put all my footwork back in, I can find myself in this stance, and now I can be really dynamic in both ways. And that's kind of how it started. Yeah, and I just kind of developed it from there. And I had my boxing side and my point karate side, and then I started to blend them all together.
Good. Is that what happened eventually? Because it's so funny you saying that. Because when I was a kid, I fought as a teen and stuff, and even in my early 20s, I was right. Everything was right. Kick, 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 front hand. And then when I started to do more full contact stuff, and as I got developed older and did bits of boxing, like you have to have your strong hand at the back. I wasn't really able to defend myself that way in right. That was the problem. With my hands, I felt like once someone had got in, I wasn't able. So I thought, right, exactly the same. So it's funny hearing you say that. And then I trained everything kind of in left. But then what happened, it just kind of, they kind of like merged together then, because it was such a conscious thought. You're consciously competent, aren't you, in one and then the other, and then you drill. And I used to spend hours awake at night thinking about, am I in the right stance? Should I change? I don't know if you went through all this. Am I committing to the wrong stance here? What am I going to do? I could have a whole different trajectory. And then after a bit, there was no stance. It was just right. Fluidity. The right techniques happened. You move off an angle and you're in a different stance. And you're not even thinking about it at that stage, are you then? And there was quite good fluidity as well. I was able to do quite different techniques off the different stance that I couldn't do off my other one.
Well, and I thought too, like when I started being successful, even like early on at the end of my amateur career and then early as a pro, it was like I never went southpaw. I never put my right leg forward. I never used my front leg. Like everyone from sport karate was like, when is Ross going to drill somebody with a side kick, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, in my brain, I'm like, I'm going to save that as long as I can, because I'm going to need that. When I'm fighting the top 3, 4, 5 guys in the world, I'm going to need that to steal around, So my thought was always, when I fought at the time, Cedric Doumbé was the champion at the 170 weight class. And I'm like, this guy, I'm not going to outbox him, but I'm going to need like a secret weapon to at least get him to back up and like, hold on a second and like win a couple rounds and give me an advantage. So I was always just like, let me save this side stance stuff. And when I really need it, it'll come out. And, unfortunately I never got to unleash it in my kickboxing career, really, but it came out quite a bit in karate combat.
It certainly did. Yeah, I remember seeing it. I seen you twist through your stances, or not even when you go off your stance. When you did your recent one, you knock out. It's not even you going off your stance. They go offline, and you can hit them as if you're in the other stance. Then, don't you? And they don't even realize that you've got a whole other repertoire from that position, which most fighters don't necessarily have.
That's right. Yeah, and even like noticing. So at least with my last fight, you and I have done point karate for so much. We know how to open our body and move along like the boundary, right? Yeah. You can't put your backside to the open space. You have to switch and go the other way. And when he was moving away from the knee, he had his back to all that space. I'm like, cut the angle, back ahead. Like there was no way he was going to defend it. So it's just recognizing mistakes too, is what kind of came out in my game.
Yeah, and it happens in an instant as well, doesn't it? After years and years of training, it's a millisecond. It's not even a thought. I don't think it's just a reaction, isn't it? From tens of that, probably 10,000s of hours of repetition and practice and drilling, and then you get a perfect performance. Like you got sent off with, which was a great way to finish your career. You must have been made up with that. And was Jenny with you for that as well? I believe was he for that one?
Yeah,
what a great way to wrap up a career.
Yeah. It was awesome, man. I didn't tell. There were only a very few people that I even told I was going to retire. I didn't tell my coaches. None of my coaches knew. None of my friends and my parents didn't know. None of my friends knew. I didn't tell anybody except for my wife, my psychologist, my mental performance coach, and actually Jody was the only one that knew, because if I didn't tell him, he's so busy doing seminars and other stuff, he wouldn't have been there.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be there. It's my last one, Jody. You got to be there. He was like, all right, I'll be there. So it was great, man. We couldn't have written it any better.
And I'm assuming you didn't tell anyone because you didn't want any added pressure to, like, it's the last one, people are going to expect you to think that you're going to go off on a good one.
It wasn't the pressure. I mean, I love pressure. I eat that stuff up. I'm all about pressure. The more pressure you can give me, the better, the more I succeed. So I like pressure, but it was more so I didn't want to be treated differently. So when I first decided I was going to retire and this was going to be my last fight, it was months before I even signed the contract. So it didn't matter who this opponent was. It was going to be my last fight. So I tried to reverse engineer it and say, okay, what do I want out of this? What would make this the best night ever? It's like, okay, I need to knock the guy out. So I need to win, and I need to win dramatically, you know? So it was like, okay, how do I do that? Well, I have to do what I always do, right? I have to train the same way. Nothing needs to change. That's what I do all the time.
Yeah,
you know, I train hard. My coaches push me. I push myself. And I was a little afraid that if I told them, maybe they would either push me too hard, or maybe they wouldn't push me hard enough, or just, I didn't want anything in my training to change. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? We've had great success the way it is. I'm going to keep this to myself, and let's just keep doing what we do. Yeah, it worked out great, man. It was kind of the perfect idea. And, you know, afterwards, once I told everyone, you know, we had a long talk afterwards, hanging out at the hotel, and they were like, probably a good idea that you didn't tell us.
Yeah, yeah. So did you hurt your foot with that kick?
It's, you know, in the moment, you know how it is. When you hit someone in the moment, it never hurts. Everything feels great.
I mean, after.
It's still a little sore, but it's nothing major. It's a little sore. I mean, it's only been about a month. So you
figure, it was. Yeah.
I mean, May 30th. So a little over a month. Yeah,
people don't realize they like you kick back of the head. I think you hit them, or side of the head or something, was it? Which is a real solid thing to hit. And when you hit them with a clean karate style round rear leg, was it rear leg or was it? It was
my rear leg. Yeah,
but it moved off at an angle, so it was more like So it was your rear leg though, your strong leg, so that there was some power in that. So people don't realize, you know, if you're a Thai boxer, you hit with the shin. We really don't, do we? And you're in barefoot, it hurts, and a lot of the times you can break bones in your foot. Did you break a bone in your foot from it?
I didn't. No, thankfully there's no breaks. But I mean, I think I'm just on the other end of it now, where I'm sparring, I'm kicking bags, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, but it's still like a little sensitive. Another couple of weeks and I'll be back to normal.
Be roundhousing people in the face again.
As best as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the plan now? So you're retired. What's the plan moving forwards? Then you said you got some things planned. What's the plan?
Yeah, you know, honestly, it's like the training. I'm training just as much, if not, I might even be training a little bit more now, to be honest with you, to support the diet or the lack of diet. You know, it's like now that I have like a little bit of freedom, where it's I don't have to worry about, you know, what's coming next, how many weeks until I have to get into training camp. I can just kind of enjoy it and go on dates with my wife and like enjoy whatever food I want, which is really nice. It's actually been easier now that I don't have another fight coming up than, you know how it is when you have to cut weight and then, you know, there's another event coming. It's like, all right, I'm going to give myself like 2 weeks, and then you lose your mind for 2 weeks. Yeah. And you got to go all the way back. So now I'm like really happy with the way I'm managing my life in general. But
you look in great shape. You look in great shape. You look really full and muscular and big, because you can't do that when you're dieting though, do you? You're totally depleted, like you're saying. It's bloody hard work, isn't it?
Yeah. And like right now, since my fight, I've just been kind of on my own. And what I mean by that is like, I have a strength and conditioning coach. Even though that's what I do for a living, I program, you know, rehab and strength and conditioning for martial artists. But, you know, I have a coach because everybody needs a coach. And, you know, but after my fight, my coach was like, hey, take a month, take 2 months, do whatever you want, have fun in the gym. So now I'm like, what do I want to do today? Biceps, chest, and shoulders. I'm like, I only need to look good for interviews. So from here to here, I look great.
Sack leg day.
Yeah, we're going to get back into, you know, some training, probably next week of like his program, and just let him objectively, you know, tell me what I need. But in terms of, you know, what my life is like right now, you know, like I was saying before, I have a full-time job. You know, I own Turbo Sports Performance, is a company that's built on helping and serving the martial arts community. So whether you're a competitor or just a hobbyist or someone that just likes to do it for fun, you know, whether it's karate, sport karate, jiu-jitsu, MMA, you know, Muay Thai, kickboxing, whatever, it's built around, you know, if you have an injury, doing rehab, specific rehab from people who understand your sport, or if you're a competitor and you're looking to get a little bit faster, stronger, more competitive, yeah, we're able to do all of that for you and help people all around the world. It's a remote company. So we have an app that we work together. It's great.
What's the app called then?
So the app is, it's like a regular app. Anybody can get the app, but it's called Train Heroic is the app. But, if you were to just download the app, you couldn't have access to what we're doing. Everything we do is customized. It's one-on-one. So it's not like we have a group template where anyone can kind of log on and just do it. I didn't want to do that. It's too cookie cutter. And like, for example, if you were looking for some help on how to get better at what you do, the way that you fight and train is very different than like Elijah, for example, right? Like you two would not do well with the same program.
No, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So my goal was to change the game a little bit and say, listen, we're all individuals. We all do different things. We all have different styles, even within the same sport. So I need to be in tune with that to help you reach your goals. So everything is one-on-one. It's custom. Right now we've got like 72 athletes on the roster. Every single one of them has a different program.
Wow, that's brilliant. Well done, Ross. That's a real good success already to have 72 athletes on there.
We're growing. We're growing.
Yeah. So have you put stuff in place to scale them? Because that's a lot of work. That is. Have you got systems in place to be able to exponentially grow? Because if you've got because obviously you've got the platform, you've got the practical experience and the brains apparently, which I didn't know till today, and the business acumen apparently as well. So
I'm learning. I'm still learning as I go.
So you got the potential there to really scale. And it's kind of one of those things, isn't it now? There's so many great things available to give you that edge. And if you're not playing and doing it, you're not going to win because someone else is obsessing about it. They're going to put that extra effort and energy like you did, like what I would have. If there's anything I could have done to get ahead, I'm doing it. And if you're not, the guys everyone else is just rocking up to that tournament to be target practice for the ones that are there to win, aren't they? Otherwise.
Well, and it comes down to investing in yourself, right? I mean, it takes certain things to reach your goals. And if there's so many people out there, and I'm sure you know tons of them, whether they've been teammates of yours or students of yours, or even people that you looked up to that maybe at one point were ahead of you, it's like for them to take the extra step and invest in themselves and say, I'm going to go get a coach or like a strength and conditioning coach. They'll tell themselves, oh no, I can't afford it. But they'll go to the club and they'll go to the bar every weekend. They'll buy the newest Nikes, they'll get a pair of Jordans. It's like, you're not investing in yourself, but there's somebody out there who is, and they're going to catch up to you. So, yes, it's all about investing in yourself. And like you said, anything that you can do, if you truly want to be where you are, you'll do it. So, this is just something that I want to be able to provide for people. And, from the medical side of things, when I was working in person as a physio, there were just so many times where martial artists would come to me because they knew me from the community and they would say, hey, I hurt my knee. I went to the doctor. The doctor told me not to train for the next 8 weeks. I was like, are you crazy? Wow. Like, you're going to go nuts. Like, first of all, forget your knee. Mentally, you're going to lose your mind. Imagine if you didn't train for 8 weeks. What kind of shape would you be in?
Exactly. Especially now at my age, I'll be in flipping shit state.
So, and those doctors it's not that they don't know what they're talking about. It's that they don't understand our sport. So of course they're going to tell you all right, well, just chill out. That you hurt yourself doing jiu-jitsu, don't do jiu-jitsu. Like, it's not that simple. And honestly, that's not the answer either. So the answer is we need to do the right things for our body and then work our way back into our sport. So, but unless you have someone that understands the sport, how do you do it? And then even as a physio, if you were going to someone who specialized in football and you hurt your leg and you're like, yeah, it hurts when I throw a side kick. They look at you and like, what's a side kick? It's like you already lost trust because they don't know what you're talking about. But now you and I are working together and I know exactly what you're trying to do, exactly how to do it. I understand the mechanics. I can get you there faster.
Brilliant. And as well, injuries have been some great opportunities for me to improve on other areas as well. When you hurt your legs and all of a sudden you go, right, I'm doing hands now, and you're developing other techniques that you wouldn't have done before or vice versa. So it's a great opportunity to work on other things, isn't it, as well? Because if you just had 8 weeks off every time you're injured, that's going to compound over a few years. You're definitely not going to be taking number one slot, are you?
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, it comes down to having coaches and mentors that know that can guide you in the right direction. So yeah, it's that's exactly what my company is built to do. And to answer your question about scaling, that's the stuff that I've been working on in kind of the on the backside for these last couple of years. You know, it's been about 2 years that the end of July will be 2 years that I've owned my own company. My strength coach also programs for some of my clients. And then I've hired someone, his name is Zach Ben-Bushna. He's also a pro fighter. He's also on the Karate Combat roster. He's from Montreal. So he grew up training with George St. Pierre. He's incredibly smart, super, super intelligent. Just posted his thesis. Like he's brilliant. He actually owns a company doing the same thing that I do. But with Canada, like his exposure was limited. So, you know, he's been doing it like 13, 14 months, but he's not nearly as far along as I was. So, you know, I trusted him and I was like, hey, listen, if you want, let me give you a little more exposure. Let me give you some of my clients. So he was working for me part-time and we've just working together. We're really starting to both elevate. And we're actually working on, I'm going to be buying his company and absorbing his company, and we're just going to work together. He's going to be my head coach, and we're going to start to scale. So you're a step ahead, man. That's exactly what we're doing right now.
Well, collaborations are such a powerful thing as well, because you can't do everything, and you can only be outstanding at one thing, really, if you're lucky. You can be good at lots of things, but if you want to be the very best at what you do, you need everyone around you needs to be the very best at what they do as well. And you're already headed in the right direction as an entrepreneur. That's exactly what you should be doing, surrounding yourself with people, as you've always done in the past, that are right at the very top of what they're doing. So what a great service. I mean, people from all over the world can subscribe and can get Ross Levine as their personal coach. So what's the demographics of your current kind of customers? And
it's crazy. It's everyone. It's everyone.
All
and
over.
And really now it's starting to explode. I mean, I've worked with Elijah when Elijah was dealing with the back injury. You know, we helped Elijah get back over that, and then he transitioned over to Karate Combat and is doing great. And last I heard, he never had a back injury again. So knock on wood, he's been doing great. But yeah, I mean, we have, you know, I generally don't work with a lot of youth unless they have parent consent. So when I will get a couple people who are like 17, 16 that reach out to me. And as long as I'm in touch with their parents as well and making sure that everyone's on the same page and they understand what we're doing, we have a couple of youth athletes on our roster. And then, you know, most of them though, I would say the bulk of the roster are, you know, people that just like to do martial arts that are just, they have little nagging injuries here and there. And it keeps them from doing what they want to do in training. They're actually not competitors. But then we have a bulk of people who are competitors, both amateur and professional, that are just trying to maximize what they're doing. We have a few clients that are in the UFC on their way up. So we're doing great, man.
Oh, wow.
You know, I don't really have, I don't want to limit what we're capable of. So I don't want to say I only work with competitors or I only work with people who are non-competitors. I think we have the capacity to do both and to help everyone equally. And we're excited. And I think that's part of the beauty of starting to evolve and bringing on someone like Zach and my coach who know how to work with pro athletes. We're all professional athletes, so we know what we need. And then, you know, maybe I become more of the rehab guy because of my background. Maybe Zach becomes more of the competitor guy because he does nutrition as well. So, you know, we can kind of play around with it until we just hit the nail and find what works best.
Brilliant. That sounds really exciting. And you can tell you're dead passionate about it as well. You're probably as passionate about that as you was the fighting. I'm assuming that's part of the reason, like you obviously are finished fighting because you've got something and you need something. Like when you stop fighting, it's a really big part. It's a really big decision to make. I remember when I stopped and I didn't achieve what you have, like, congratulations. I take my hat off to you. Absolutely amazing what you've managed to do. But even for that, because you know yourself as a fighter, and I was a paratrooper for 8 years before that. So everything that I'd done was around combat and being that guy. And when I had to stop, I was like, well, who am I going to be moving forwards? But then I remember when I did stop, I was fucking relieved. Like I didn't need to be that guy anymore. I was like, oh my God, why was I doing that for so long? That was tiresome. I can just chill out now and just leave it to everybody else to kind of crack on. How did you feel when you stopped? Was there any of that going on? A bit of relief?
Well, it's
fear?
There's a lot of emotions, right? There's so many emotions. Number one, I'm super fortunate that I have a long-standing education to fall back on. It was one of the things that, again, my parents did a really great job of like, you can always do martial arts. You'll always have martial arts to fall back on, but you need to have something else just in case you don't want to open a school. And when I was younger, I never wanted to open a gym. I knew it would be something that I think I would be successful at it, but for whatever reason, it didn't get me up in the morning to just be a martial arts instructor at the time. And I think it's just because I was so passionate about competition that I couldn't put that aside yet. I had to see it through. So I went, and in the meantime, I said, well, if I'm not going to be a pro athlete, this is back when I was, in my early 20s, when I didn't really know what I wanted to do from college and university. I thought when I was younger, I thought I was actually going to be a professional, like baseball or football player, American football. And when those didn't kind of pan out, I was like, well, I had an injury. I tore my hamstring and I went to physio, and my physio was awesome. He was like the coolest, in my opinion, he was like the coolest guy. He was helping me get better. I felt motivated, and I was like, man, like this guy's got a cool job. I'm looking around the room. I'm like, this guy's an Olympic wrestler. That person's a swimmer. There's a tennis player. It's like, you're surrounded with athletes all day long. You're helping them get back to where they want to be. I was like, this is cool. So I talked to him, and he was like, this is the path. So I went, got my education, I got my doctorate, and that's where I decided I can be that person that's going to help all the other athletes and coach them back to being elite, And then I became a pro athlete. I was like, all right, let me go through this route now too. So it was just kind of like, following what I was told when I was younger, and it all just kind of fell into place.
That's brilliant. And do you have your own school as well?
No, I don't. So I never opened the gym. It's something that in my, if I were to call it like a 2 to 3 year plan, it is something that I want to do now. Like I'm really into coaching now. I coach once a week at the gym that I train at. And, I'm still teaching seminars, and I'm super passionate about coaching. But I always promised myself I would never open my own gym while I was trying to be a world champion. I feel like those two just generally don't mesh. Very few people have done it, if any. I mean, there's not that many that I can name at a professional level. You look at the UFC, Bellator, PFL, boxing, kickboxing, Glory Kickboxing. I don't know any world champion that owns and operates a successful gym. Yeah,
you can't. You got to be selfish as a fighter. You've got to be all into the one thing. But yeah, it's great. I suppose now to have it as a base, especially with what you're doing. And it's a great way of really kind of impacting your local community, pushing out your mindset and ethos and values as well. But you're already able to do that anyway on a bigger level, I suppose, with the platform you put together. But yeah, brilliant, mate. Great stuff.
So, the goal is eventually to do that. I would love to own a gym and really get into coaching. But I think all that conversation started with the emotions of like leaving and what am I going to do with myself now? But yeah, initially there was a lot of like relief for sure of like, I don't have to do that again. But I'm a very big advocate for, mental health, and like I go to therapy. I just had a therapy session yesterday. It's something that I've done for years, and it's not because I have any type of like issues or anything like that. But, I go by myself. My wife goes by herself. Sometimes we go together. I think it's just good to talk about stuff. And especially as men, I feel like men don't do it enough.
No. I think if I went to therapy, the therapist would need therapy.
Which means you need therapy. So, no, but I just had a session yesterday, and we were talking about that. And I was explaining to her, I feel like if Ross Levine is a 1,000-piece puzzle, there's one little piece that's missing, and I'm never going to get it back, and that's because I made that choice, so those are some of the emotions that I'm going through now of like, all right, I know I wanted to do that. I know it was the right decision to retire, but there's still a piece of me that's like, man, how do I fill that void? And I think I'm in a good place because I have a lot of places to put that passion, that energy, that attention. I have it with, my wife and my family. I have my my business, my training, my coaching. So I have all these little places to start filling in that gap. But it's hard, man. I'm not going to lie. It's not easy.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, at least you've got a pathway, like you said, and a vision and a goal, and you're not left with nothing to do. Like you said, there's 1,000 pieces. Fighting's just one of them. You're a very achieved person by this, and a very balanced person still, and humble. You really are.
Thanks,
you're very respectful and really easy to talk to. And it's been I've had a really enjoyable conversation with you, actually, Ross. And thank you very much for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, just especially after speaking to you and hearing all that. So
not at this hour. Not at this hour.
Yeah, it's only morning.
Yeah,
yeah. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today, buddy, and all the very best in the future.
My pleasure, man. We got to link up soon. I got to come out to the UK and just hang with you guys for a little bit. It's been way too long.
Yeah, just let us know when you're coming over. We'll sort something out, mate.
Will do, man. That'd be fun.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ross.
Yes, sir.